You are your brother's keeper. You are your brother's keeper. So yes, being able to hold each other accountable, that's what real loyalty is all about, right? We have a lot of misplaced loyalty nowadays. People don't honor. There's this sense of the people that don't follow the rules, are seen as victims when they're held accountable. And those that are holding people accountable are seen as like the oppressors.
Yeah.
Welcome to the In the Arena podcast. My name is Jared Miguez, a co-host on this podcast that brings you the inspiring stories of our clients who are leaders and innovators across different industries in Southeast Louisiana. They are visionary entrepreneurs, savvy real estate professionals, media creators, military business owners, and community champions. And we are going to showcase the remarkable achievements and share their personal stories. Tune in for insightful conversations, valuable lessons, and motivational stories that are going to reveal their secrets to success and offer you insights to help you on your own path. Welcome to In the Arena podcast.
Well, I'm really excited to welcome to the In the Arena podcast Colonel Tom Borden.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always been a conversation for sure. And like we talked about a second ago, the purpose of this is to help our clients become better business people, better people in general. And I think that, and honestly, even our firm, leadership is something that we always talk about and that we try to live up to be great leaders, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Well, leadership's easy. Being a leader's hard.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting dynamic because, you might, in one area of your life, you might be seen as a leader, you might take on a leadership role, and then in other areas of your life, you might not be in that, you might not have earned that, or you might not be called that, or you might not have the responsibility to be that type of a person. And some people have gifts and talents that are leaders, and some people that aren't. And so you lean on your 30 years of military experience, and you make it very clear in your book and in your presentation that I was listening to that these are not your rules and general truths, right?
No, so Dom and I were just laughing about that. They say that less than 1% of the population is capable of having an original thought. I consider myself a proud member of the majority.
The 99%.
So I try to, in my book, I try to attribute it as best as I can to the source. But the other thing Dom and I were talking about is none of this stuff is new, right? So as I was doing a lib review from my book, I would find the next book in the works cited the book I just finished. And I found myself back 2,000 years ago, back in the ages, back with the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and so much of that stuff that it resonates today. If it's just been repackaged. What we're talking about now is a lot of the stuff repackaged philosophy from 2,000 years ago.
I know the beauty of life is that we're all given the ability to lean on, stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us. And it's our obligation, and I say this about my life in general, but it's our obligation to take the head start that we've been given over the last, I say lifetime with my parents and my grandparents, but like you said, over the last 2,000 years, take that head start and take it further, right? I mean, I feel like that's an obligation for us, especially who have the ability to be leaders and to impact people at that level. And so I completely agree, and I think you're right. There, 1% of people probably have a unique thought, but the 99%, it's there are compounding thoughts you can add on to things that make them even better.
Well, after 30 years in the Marine Corps, they take you out back and shoot you. So heaven looks an awful lot like the Citadel campus in Charleston for my wife and I. I couldn't imagine doing anything more significant in this second chapter than educating and developing the next generation of principal leaders. That's just, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So what does a man like you who served 30 years in the military, like, you've been out for 2.5, 3 years now, right?
Well, 5.
Oh, 5. Okay. Oh, 5 years. Wow. Okay. I said you wouldn't hide that fast. Feel that too, right? But I mean, how do you make that shift? How do you just turn one thing off and then move on to the next thing? But what is it that turns you out? Is it fishing? Is it golfing? What's the thing that you're allowed to, turn everything off?
Oh, well, now, so I just discovered it like 2 months ago, and it's the best thing in the entire world. Grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we had a difficult conversation, but we decided not to have kids. We let them know, but we're just going to have grandkids from this point. I have a grandson, Gypsy Thomas, and he's perfect. Oh man, so this to me is this is what it's all about. But again, it's just it's paying it forward because I don't know how good of a dad I was. I was an absentee landlord. A lot of times I was gone all the time, and I mean, I had very well adjusted kids, and that's the story I tell myself so I can sleep at night. You did 18 moves, all that stuff. Like 18, wow. I've had a hard time holding the job. We'll see how long this one lasts. But I just want to kind of all those things that I failed to do as a parent. I plan on making up in spades with this grandchild for sure. So I'm really looking forward to that.
So thinking about that, thinking about your grandchildren and passing on that knowledge, right? What would you say? And I know that there's a laundry list of lessons that a man like you has, right? The front of the book, the back of the book that we talked about already, right? What's the one that you're like, this is the anchor for me. This is the thing that I will never forget. This is the thing that I live by. What is the one lesson that really helped shift, change, move you forward, however you want to word it?
Wow, that's you try to distill it down to one, Dom. That's hard. I think life. So as we're talking about grit, right? So how do you build grit? And I just see so much in society right now. The things that had built grit when I was young has been removed. So how do you bring that stuff back, right? How do you do that? And I'll just ask, when was the last time you saw a kid in the cast?
I'm going to talk about that right now with you because my kids just got a trampoline. Or my brother-in-law bought my kids a big trampoline. Has padding around the springs, has a beautiful net around this thing. My kids are not getting hurt. But when I think about my trampoline, I had a spring. Every other spring was missing. Right? We didn't have the padding. It was right underneath the power line. And we were jumping off the thing and hurting ourselves. And so I totally agree with you.
When was the last time a kid did a cast? I'm not advocating, for it, but what I am saying is that cast was a badge of honor, right? I mean, you had all your friends sign it. I remember cutting mine off. It stumped to holy hell. My mom had to throw it out because, it was a stinking mildew just sticking out here. But now you see a kid in a cast, what do you immediately assume? Well, that was an abuse or neglect. No, that's raising a kid. That's a kid being a kid. That's raising a young man. So he understands how to assess and mitigate risk. So it's not their fault. It's my generation's fault. My generation was the one that pulled all the jungle gyms off the playgrounds and put every kid in the bicycle outlet here, right? So now this current generation sees risk as something to be, avoided, right? No, for 30 years in the Marine Corps, that was my job, was to assess, mitigate, and when ready, exploit risk. That's what we do. But now, also, how do you allow them to? You keep the bumper rails of life up there to make sure no one gets hurt, right? But to allow them to have that free play to go out there and learn and assess risk, because you're not going to learn how to mitigate and assess risk playing Fortnite or Xbox. Yeah.
And I would even say it's okay to get a little bit of hurt too. Let's keep everybody.
Do hard things. So do hard things when you're young. Yeah, literally, it's a life hack. It will remap their brain. There's so many studies out there on the neuroplasticity of our brains, especially when young people experience adversity and they overcome that adversity. They build that resiliency. They build that resolve. That's that we so desperately need, that collective grit. So the other thing I would tell you is when we start talking about grit is, I would say, my kid, show me your friends, I'll show you your future, right? So the best way there's two different ways to build grit. I think Dunbar said, right? You can do it the hard way, how you and I did it, Don, right? Or you can do it the easy way. Surround yourself, with gritty people, that gritty culture. These kids now are all products of the pandemic. So one of the COVID keepers that I like to profess a lot is, talking about your close contacts. Remember when they stuck that Q-tip up your nose and it came back positive? What was the first thing they did? Well, they pulled your close contacts, right? So who were you associated with? And then what happened? Well, they got to embrace the suck too. They went into the COVID cooler and they were quarantined. Well, now something bad happens. Who are your close contacts? Who are you hanging around with, right? Or Epictetus said, you do. surround yourself with people that will lift you out. So that's kind of what we're trying to do at the sales. Get young men and women, allow them to experience some intentional stress, right? Some adversity, put a lot of obstacles in front of them, allow them to overcome those obstacles, wash, rinse, and repeat. Every time they do that, they build more resilience, they build more resolve, and they also build that collective grit. Those classmates theirs that they went through the 4-5 system with will be their accountability partners for the rest of their life.
I felt that one, the Sule to that word accountability. I think it applies to at home too. I have a 2, a 4, a 2, a 5, and a 7-year-old, and then the team that you have at work that we're dealing with, the accountability. Yeah, I think people kind of like the COVID mentality that people don't like that word accountability. They run away from it, and then almost holding people or their kids accountable also almost has a bad stigma.
It's because people are scared of the truth.
100%. But and how do you, as a leader, how at what point are you giving people grace, and then also suffering, having consequences for the actions? That how do you play both sides of that?
Well, accountability is hard, right? Because loyalty is hard. Is they're going to have conflicting loyalties, right? So how do you take care of your people, right? Is it in their best interest to hold them accountable, or is it to let them slide? Well, it may feel good at first to let them slide, but if you're going to actually raise men and women of virtue and character, right, there needs to be accountability. They need to have that peer group that's going to hold them accountable when they start drifting off to the left or to the right. Grab their belt and pull them back where they need to be. Right? That's what a good peer group's going to do. That's what a good accountability group's going to do. Hey, you're going to skip leg day today? Oh no, hell no. You're not skipping leg day today, no. Sure. Get back in here. We're all going to the gym. Keep on doing it. Or it's hey, we got a sheep pops out at the pub. Hey, I'm going to drive home. Yeah, no, you're not. You're not. You are your brother's keeper. You are your brother's keeper. So yes, being able to hold each other accountable, that's what real loyalty is all about, right? We have a lot of misplaced loyalty nowadays. People don't want to. There's this sense of the people that don't follow the rules, are seen as victims when they're held accountable. And those that are holding people accountable are seen as like the oppressors. Yeah. We brought in Lou Holtz. One of the cadets stood up and I asked him, and they were wrestling with some stuff in the car at the time. And they said, hey coach, how did you discipline your players? And he paused and he looked up at the ceiling for effect for a minute. And he goes, I've been coaching for a long time. I don't think I've ever disciplined a player. Now I've enforced the consequences of their decisions, but I don't know if I've ever disciplined a player. Wow, that's gold. Wow, that's someone carved that into marble right there. Right? Yeah. So that's what accountability is, right? Enforcing the consequences of people's decisions.
I wonder, Golden Nugget, does he, I mean, when he is meeting with those players, I'd love to ask him, are you setting the expectation of the consequences for the actions on the front end clearly, or are you just giving a consequence that's equal to the lack of discipline or break of the rule?
I'd love to hear your answer, because to clue him in, a little while ago, we were talking about giving that grace of, hey, I got your back if you have to make a in the moment decision and change course, right?
Well-intentioned mistake.
Well-intentioned.
So that's the difference. So that's when you give grace, when it's a well-intentioned mistake. Yeah. When they were trying to do the right thing, but things go sideways. Because that's what experience is, right? Experience is being able to foresee the second and third order effects of your decision. When they're 19 or 20, they get cause and effect, right? But being able to foresee the second and third order effects, well, that comes from experience. If they're aggressively trying to do the right thing, but they screw up in the process, that's when they get grace. That's when they get your back. I want to build a culture of commitment, not necessarily compliance. Sure. The rules get, telling people the consequences up front, that gets your compliance. I don't know if that's going to get your commitment.
Yeah.
Your commitment is, we were talking about my command philosophy. Do right and fair on that. That's going to get your commitment, right? How do you build trust in an organization? People get it all wrong, right? reciprocity. You get trust by giving it. You don't earn trust. People think, well, I earn trust. No, you didn't earn anything, right? You want to build a trust, a culture of trust in your organization. The only way to do it is to give it away. You actually have to hang yourself out there a little bit, take some risk, right? And you extend trust to somebody. Are they going to violate it sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. Then we circle back to accountability.
I love that idea though of giving it, not having to earn my trust. Just here it is. I'm going to give it to you until you break it, kind of thing. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Sure. That to complete the thought back to loyalty, what we were talking about, right? So loyalty is a result. It's never a requirement. You ever find yourself working for somebody who's demanding loyalty? Time to start polishing up that resume. Right.
For sure. Yeah, I think that something that resonates with me is making sure. In my head, I'm thinking somebody who not necessarily well-intentioned mistake, but somebody with an attitude that you don't agree with. And in your book, and I note that I took was that you talk about integrity, right? You do the right thing, and you work hard. But that's a value that you. And I think based on one of my friends, Phil Nico, one of Dom's friends too. He was a Marine as well. You know Phil by chance? He's from around here. I know you smile like you knew Phil, but he's in the Marine Corps. He always talks about the same values, and every time I talk to a Marine, they end up using the same words and terminology and language. And I think that's because y'all are still the values in you whenever you're training at the beginning of y'all's career, and then you embody those things as you live your life going forward.
Well, there's a coaching tree, right? So if you run the taproot back, there's going to be those great leaders that have had their effect on all of us. I mind to do right, fear no man. My best friend, best man in my wedding, Major General Dave Odom. He's the Commanding General of 2nd Marine Division right now. He always says, hey, the right time to do the right thing is always right now. Right? That's Major General Odom. The Marines know what they ought to do. We all know what we ought to do. And that should be the standard that we hold to, right? It's not compliance to a particular rule or regulation, but you do the right thing.
So is there a dynamic in the book, The Marine Maxims, right? It's clearly written by somebody who's in the military, right? And he says, and I think that you said that your call sign was Mufasa.
Yes.
And that Disney would not get all out. Yes, that name, that's Mufasa's Maxim, so you decided to go with Marine Maxims. From a practical standpoint, applying this to business, does your book apply in that area in Rome as well, or is it just military?
Well, actually, I think it's been getting a lot of traction out there in the business world and a lot of traction in law enforcement. The Marines don't care how much you know, but they know how much you care. Of course, that's not mine. I'm paraphrasing Teddy Roosevelt. But when I would go and I would visit one of my subordinate organizations, of course, I would spend a lot of time researching, their material readiness, their training readiness, all the questions that you would expect the commander to ask when you come in there. But for every minute I would spend on their training stats, their material readiness stats, I'd spend an equal amount of time researching all of the Marines that I was going to encounter, right? So if I'm going to bump into Dom, right, I'm going to know that, Dom's, previous, experience, with the PJs. I'm going to know that he's from Louisiana. I'm going to know all these things about him. I'm going to know if he's married. I'm going to know this. So when we're having this conversation, first and foremost, I'm not going to call up, airman, whatever. I'm going to call, I'm calling Doc, right? Why? Nothing sounds so sweet to a man than the sound of his own man.
Right? That'll influence people.
Check. Just being able to spend some time to actually research that and know their first name. So when the colonel comes in and he's talking to a young lieutenant and he addresses him by his first name, what's the lieutenant think?
Yeah, and knows
the colonel knows who I am. Wow, right? People who feel they're valued in the organization will always exceed expectations, right? That goes back to the loves, right? We were talking about love before you came in. It got a little love. I was down that snake. Got a little warm and fuzzy in here, but
you got a big guy like Sam Blair, who is a Navy SEAL, who's had a lot of experience in himself. If he's comfortable saying, then I think it's something that everybody should be comfortable saying.
Absolutely. Busy K. If your Marines believe that you love them, that you truly give a crap about them, there's nothing they won't do for the organization. And notice I didn't say for you, because that's maximum number 2. It's not about you. All right. And that's an old paradox that they all wrestle with.
You got to have them bought into the values and make sure they embody them. They also got to be bought into where you're going. And so you get, in my experience, when we started our firm, we had everybody kind of bought into this being the best title company law firm in the area. We're 2 years in, and that standard is the hard standard to live. And we had to recheck that everybody was still bought into that purpose because, after 2 years of constantly grinding, you got to have the grit to be able to have the mentality that this is it's hard. It's not any longer, it's a long game to play. And so reiterating that purpose over and over again and living that, like you said, living it first and then reiterating that and being clear about your expectations on values and your purpose and where you're going. I think the important, and I think the military probably did a great job, but you guys, I bet y'all know what y'all's purpose is, what your values are. Because you would tell people count all the time.
All the time?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So let's talk about the book before we finish. Sure. I love to read and Don loves to read. And again, like loving the military spirit behind things. What inspired Marine Maxim? Did y'all talk about this enough? Yeah. What inspires Marine Maxim, the book, and why would people need to take and listen to read it?
Well, what I try to do, as I mentioned, was take all the leadership lessons that I acquired over a 30-year Marine Corps career from some of the best in the business and just distill it down to some irreducible minimums, some tactical and practical lessons that people can apply regardless of their line of work. So if you have issues with communications in your organization, there's a chapter on that. If you're trying to improve proficiency, trying to instill discipline, trying most importantly to build cohesion, there's a chapter for that. And most importantly, if the chapters themselves aren't of value to you, I guarantee you, right, the bibliography will. So every one of these lessons has a bunch of additional information. So if you want to learn more about this given subject, read this book, read this article, listen to this podcast. I lay it out in each and every one of the maxims.
There you go. That's great. And what you're doing now are you're consulting organizations, and you give keynote speeches. Is why you're here in Hammond today, right? You're presenting your.
I am. Well, actually, I'm the commandant at the civil, so that's Gordon 2.0. 3.0, we'll see. But the dean was kind enough. Dean Lopez was kind enough to invite me to come. She heard me speak at a conference in Greenville, South Carolina, and she reached out and asked me to come out. Again, I'm just trying to pay it forward.
Sure. So what can we expect from your speech tomorrow at the event? Well, you don't need to give the whole thing now. just a teaser.
Well, the teaser would be I just want to lay that philosophical parapet down so that these leaders can then take these lessons, these maxims, right, and then apply them to whatever part of their industry or where part of their organization needs some adjustments. Right. So I want to give some tactical and practical advice that they could use. Well done.
And there's a lot of very impressive and great businesses in Southeast Louisiana. The main issue that we see with those businesses is that they don't have an actual system which they operate in. And it's because it's hard once you get a couple of employees and you have there's still a process of other people and hold people accountable, and leadership is difficult. So a lot of the businesses stay smaller and they don't grow. So having that big perspective is going to be great.
In our line of work, consistency is a superpower, right? Consistency is a superpower. So that circles back to accountability. Hold us all to that standard, not because we have to, but because we want to. Demonstrate that they meant culture of compliance. Commitment. Hey, gents, this has been awesome. I greatly appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for bouncing around today from Chad. Appreciate your value.